You're listening to the Flourish Mindset, where we talk to entrepreneurs and discover their successes, their failures, and their secrets to winning at business. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Flourish Mindset. With me today, I have Darsh Desai. He has been in entrepreneurship since a sophomore in college when he was starting up concerts and parties. Then he moved into real estate, and now he is actually a real estate entrepreneur. So welcome, Darsh.
Thanks for having me, Hannah. I appreciate it. And like we were talking about off camera, you have a cool setup here. I'm envious and jealous of it.
Well, you're welcome to come use it.
You should rent it out to me maybe one day.
Sounds good. We can do that. So tell me, what does it mean to be a real estate entrepreneur?
Sure. Yeah, so, a little bit of my background, as you were talking about, when I was in college, I was studying mechanical engineering. And while I was in school, a group of friends and I, we started a business where we were like throwing hip hop concerts and stuff here in Fargo. And, that was a lot of fun and it was cool, but really the biggest thing that it taught me was that I really like doing business. I like doing sales, marketing, stuff like that more than I liked doing mechanical engineering. And, one thing led to another, and I started kind of educating myself as I got older, and I started really looking into ways that I can build wealth, ways that I can kind of create a lifestyle that I want to live. And a lot of those arrows pointed towards owning a business. And so, once I figured that out, I was like, okay, what kind of business do I want to get into? And real estate is what kind of caught my eye because you can do the wealth building and you can do the business at the same time. So I started educating myself about real estate. And I thought, well, if I want to get into the investment side of real estate, that's where my passion was, I should probably get my real estate license. And so I got my real estate license. I joined the Brandenburg real estate team, actually.
Yep.
And so I was young. I think I was like 22 when I joined the team. And I started off as an inside sales agent. So I was just in a little room making phone calls, setting appointments for other agents.
But you had like some of the most hustle I've ever seen from an inside sales agent.
I appreciate that. I think I was just, I was trying to set an appointment with anyone I possibly could.
Yes.
And I know that there's some other agents at the time that didn't appreciate that because I just wanted to set as many appointments as I could. But I did that for like 3 months, and then I think the way the team was structured back then was there was one listing agent, and there was six, seven buyers agents. Mm-hmm. And the one listing agent at the time, he was stepping down, and so you guys came to me and you're like, hey, do you want to be the listing agent? And I was like this 22, 23-year-old kid, and I was like, sure, let's do it. And so then I became the listing agent. I did that for I think about a year. And then while I was doing that, we started. I think I bought like a property to flip or something like that. And the owner of the team, Derek, he bought a property, and then I think he bought the Home Investors franchise. And he came to me and he's like, hey, do you wanna kind of be like my acquisition guy, and we'll do a bunch of flips. So then I started doing that, and then that's kind of really what got me going. On the investment side. So then we started doing a bunch of flips. And then about a year in, I kind of left and started my own thing, and I started Greenwater, which is an investment firm, and we buy apartment buildings, we buy self-storage facilities, we have Airbnbs, and then we're starting a development in the spring.
Wow.
So those are kind of our main focuses right now. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of my story.
You've been crazy busy, but I actually want to touch a little bit. You said you were like 22 when we moved you into that listing agent role, and I kind of laugh now thinking about it because so many other 22-year-olds would have probably said something like, oh, well, no one's going to take me seriously because I'm 22. Older people want to talk to older people, or everyone's going to think I'm too new. There's so many excuses that could be thrown at that, but you didn't take those excuses. You just like took the role and you ran with it. And tell me a little bit more about like how you got over that mindset, or was it even never a thing for you? You just instantly knew like I'm meant for this and I'm going to do awesome at it.
No, I think it was a mindset thing, and I definitely had to kind of overcome that. One thing I used to do is I used to wear suits.
Yes.
Right? So I'm sure you remember that. And people used to give me a hard time about that, but really when I look back, it was one, not only did people take me more seriously because I was dressed for the job, but two, it was a mental thing. Every time I put on my suit, I was in that mind space of, okay, I'm out here to go get business.
Right.
And then, I think once you feel confident in yourself and you feel confident in the product that you're selling to the client or whatever you're doing, people don't ask you those questions like, how old are you? I used to get that a lot. How old are you?
Right.
And then I would tell, I'm 22. And like, oh, you're just a baby, But then once I started really getting into it, learning the craft of being a listing agent, learning how to be a good real estate agent, wearing the suit, I stopped getting those questions. And that's kind of how I overcame that.
I think some people worry that like at 22, if you're wearing a suit, you look like you're trying to wear dad's big suit or something like that. But like it's all about owning the persona and
absolutely
owning the confidence to go with it. And
absolutely.
you did that. So I think that made a huge impact on how people felt.
And my suits looked good because they were
tailored. They did. They looked very nice.
I spent a lot of money on those suits.
Well, I think it's worked out pretty well for you in the way you've elevated so quickly in the different types of your career.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's, it's as cliche as it sounds, it's like knowledge is always, it's like just be hungry for knowledge, right? Always try to get obsessed with something. And, I come from really no formal education. While I was in college, I dropped out of college, and then I got into real estate. And at that time when I dropped out of college, I was thinking to myself, like, oh man, like I'm not really that smart. I couldn't even finish college. But that wasn't the truth. Really, the truth was that I wasn't really applying myself to something I really wanted to learn. Right. And then once I got into real estate, I devoured books. And I read as much as you possibly could about investing in real estate, about even being a realtor. I took different courses. I bought a bunch of stuff. I did this, did that. And that what that kind of taught me is like, no, it wasn't that I wasn't smart enough to finish college. It was that I wasn't really applying myself to something I really wanted to actually learn about.
Right.
And I think once you figure that out, it can become really powerful. When you find something that you can really get obsessed about and really devote yourself to, you can go a pretty long way in a short time, and it's pretty cool to see.
Absolutely, I think obsession with something is probably the most important piece, though, because when you dropped out of college, you could have said, oh, well, it just didn't interest me, and now I feel like that failure, and the world has happened to me, and you could have had that victim mentality, but instead you're like, I just wasn't obsessed with it. I wasn't passionate about it, but I can be obsessed with something, and I can be passionate about something, and that's when you devoured it. The opportunity to dive into something headlong is so important. But the willingness to do it is the most important piece of that. The willingness to dive in and teach yourself and grow.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've always kind of had this fail forward mentality, right? So it's like anytime I would, and it's worked out thankfully, but I could also see how it couldn't work out. And there's been times where I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like I think that they have this thing in common where urgency is a really important trait in them. Like they have this sense of urgency, and that's how I've always felt about everything. And so whenever I learned about something new, like for example, when I learned about the BRRRR method, right? The BRRRR method is when you buy a property, you refinance it, you pull your money out. I just wanted to go do it right away, and I didn't really think about like I put properties under contract where I didn't even know where the money was. Like I didn't even have a single dime. I just put it under contract, and then I was like, okay. Now the next step is figuring out where the money comes from.
Absolutely.
So I think that's big, and I think if you kind of have that mentality, it's you can go, you can make some good progress instead of overthinking things. I think a lot of people overthink things, and they get stuck in this like analysis paralysis.
Absolutely.
And you just gotta go for it. And you look at your downside, you look at your risk, like what's the worst thing that can happen if I do this? And if you can handle that, and if you can mitigate that, then just do it.
I think that's really important because so many people are, like you said, the analysis paralysis. Fear is holding them back, or readiness is holding them back. And so I gotta get this ready, and I gotta get this ready, and I gotta be ready here, and I have to find the financing. But yeah, it is a matter of diving in head first and then knocking things down, because then you're not waiting to make something else happen and waiting for this. And you will find excuse after excuse after excuse to never make it happen. If that's what you're gonna do.
Exactly, and you kind of force yourself because like for example, in that example, I used to put properties under contract. I didn't have any money. Well, now you force yourself to go find money.
Right.
Right. So now it's like you put under contract, you have no choice but to go find money. If you never put that property under contract and you just tell yourself, well, I need to go find money, you'll probably never do it because there's no timeline, there's no deadline, there's no fire to your feet, you know. So,
Yeah.
and maybe that's not a good way to do things, but that's what's worked for me.
I like it personally, but then most entrepreneurs do.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Tell me a little bit more. I feel like there are so many people out in YouTube and TikTok and Instagram who talk about BRRRR and talk about going and finding the money when you need it. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you got creative with finding this financing?
Yeah, I think networking was huge, right? Okay. So, I would go meet people who wanted to give other people money. That was their business of lending money to make money. So I went out and found opportunities where I could find hard money lenders. I could find bankers that would work for me. I went to family and friends. And then I saved up my own money too. I lived, and I still do to this day, I live on very, very little, right? Mm-hmm. Because what the thing is like, and this is what I told my girlfriend too when we lived together, and I told her, hey, let's eat shit for 10 years, and then 10 years later, let's see where we're at and reevaluate. And I guarantee if we do that, we'll be in a much, much better position 10 years from now, instead of, maybe spending money on things that aren't as important right now.
Right.
And that was a big way too. Like a lot of the deals I still do today, a lot of the deals I started doing back then it was with my own cash, or it was with, some of my cash, and I bring in a different partner, some of their cash. And yeah, just kind of getting creative like that.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but first you lived in a duplex.
Yeah, so I did that for a little while too. I lived in a duplex, and so I house hacked it, is I think what they call it. And so I lived in one side, rented out the other side, and so that paid for my mortgage. And then I moved out of there and actually bought 2 twin homes that were attached.
Side by side, yeah.
And that's where I live right now. So I live in one of them and I rent out the other one.
That is such a great opportunity. People think that they have to go find that other rental opportunity. But if you're willing to live like no one else, which you just talked about too, if you're willing to live like no one else, you have the opportunities to live like no one else later.
I think that's yeah, absolutely. I think Dave Ramsey says that, and I 100% believe in that. Delayed gratification is huge. It's absolutely huge.
Right.
But, in terms of getting into real estate, if you can find an opportunity like that where you can live in it and rent out the other side or rent out the other bedroom, that's probably the best way to first break into it for anyone that is looking to get into it.
Right. And everyone has their excuses too. Oh, well, I already have a family, that won't work. But
well, Hannah, it comes with sacrifices.
Right?
It comes with, I will say that. It comes with sacrifice. When I was living in that duplex, I had tenants below me that were very, very loud. And there was nights where I couldn't sleep. They brought a dog in at one point that wasn't supposed to be there, so I could hear that thing barking all night. After I moved out, actually, they started a huge fire in that place.
No.
And they almost damn near burned it to the ground. And even the place I live right now is a little more comfortable, but yeah, you have someone living, you have a shared wall with somebody, and sometimes there's issues with that, and so it comes with sacrifices, but you kind of have to remember, hey, why am I doing this, and is it going to be worth it at the end?
Right. Well, you basically just touched on, maybe it wasn't a failure, but definitely a setback is the place being burned, then how are you supposed to rent it out? So
right. Have
you had any other failures or setbacks that you've learned from in this?
Oh yeah, there's always stuff that happens. So that was one. Yeah, there's always stuff that happens with deals. I've lost deals I've lost them because you sometimes you get too greedy and you come in too low, even though you could have gone in higher, or you said the wrong thing, or there's wins and losses, right? And the thing is, I read this book once, and there's this big developer, I forgot his name, but he told me, or in the book he says, he wakes up every morning and he expects something to go wrong. He expects there to be some kind of issue, some kind of problem, some kind of fire he's got to put out, or some kind of disappointment.
Sure.
And with that expectation, when it happens, he's ready to solve it right away. Instead of going into his day, oh, this day is going to be perfect. A lot of people say that, right? Imagine your day is going to be perfect. Well, the truth is, in this business, it's not going to be perfect, and something is always going to happen. And when it happens, you have to kind of just be ready to deal with it.
Absolutely.
But in terms of mistakes, yeah, there's stuff that happens all the time. I can't remember anything huge right now, and we've never lost money on a deal, knock on wood. But there's always minor things that happen that cause you to lose a deal, like I said, or fires, tenants breaking stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that.
And I mean, especially in real estate, even when you lose money on one deal, what is the invaluable knowledge that you've learned? It's still a piece of brand building because your name was out there during that time. So, like, you have to even think about those little failures of losing a little money, but how many other things did you grow and learn and value that you got out of the deal anyway.
Yeah.
So.
And I think some of it's trial and error. Like this year we got into Airbnbs. So we have 4 Airbnbs right now, 2 lake properties. And it's okay. We started doing it, and the plan originally was we wanted to scale that out to like 20, 30 of them. And we're at 4, and we're like, nah, I think we're good. Okay. I don't think we need any more. And we realized that there's other things in our business that make more money and is less brain damage. And so I think a lot of it's trial and error, and I think that's part of being an entrepreneur too, right? So you're going to do things, and those things aren't always going to work, and you're going to have to kind of shift and change and do other things.
I love that. So pivoting, right?
Yep.
People think that, this was my plan. This is what I've been working towards. This is, the 10-year goal. At some point, if it's not going to be what you think it is, it's silly to keep working towards it. You need to stop, and you need to pivot, and you need to go in the right direction. And so every day you're getting more knowledge to figure out the right choices, right?
Yep.
And it's silly. If you know it's a wrong choice, why do you keep walking down that road? Why don't you pivot now and go towards the right choice? So you guys did that, and I love that. You guys didn't keep going down the wrong path. Tell me a little bit more. I know you said you're working on a development coming up here. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so right now our 3 biggest focuses are storage. So we have about 15,000 square feet right now. We have 1 facility. The goal is to get to 100,000 square feet by the end of this year. Acquisition of apartments, that's our bread and butter, right? So that's really what we do. We buy value-add apartments. We'll reposition them, we'll fix them up, and then sometimes we keep them, sometimes we resell them. And then building and development is kind of what we're new at now. So in the spring, we're going to be building 10 single-family homes and 2 apartment complexes. And yeah, that's been a challenge. It's like I know the world of acquiring already existing real estate, but I'm new to the world of building stuff. And it's kind of like, I'm sure you've read that book or you've heard about it, Who Not How.
Yes.
And so that's kind of what I thought to myself. And so we hired a project manager. He's got like 40 years of construction experience. And so we brought him in. He's on payroll, and he's going to help us put it together. And it's, we're going to see. It makes sense on paper. Will it make sense in real life? Well, I guess we're going to find out.
Well, and luckily with development, a lot of that stuff can really be worked out ahead of time too. There's just so much homework that needs to be done and back work that needs to be done. So at least you can go in a lot more knowledgeable than when you're doing acquiring.
Correct. Actually, acquiring is interesting because it's, like when you buy an apartment building, for example, there's like historicals, right? Like there's 3 years of historical. Here's how the property's going to perform. Eventually, when you buy enough of the same asset class, it's pretty predictable.
Okay.
Right? Like if I go buy a B-class building in South Fargo, I know how much it's going to cost me to run it. I know what kind of tenants I can put in there. I know what a 2-bedroom rents for, 1-bedroom, etc. With building, it's been interesting because every day is like up and down. Like one day, the price of materials might be really high, but labor might be low. The other day might be vice versa.
Right.
So that's kind of been a little challenging, is figuring that out. So yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. Our vision with the building side is, we don't want to be single family home builders. We want to build quality assets for ourselves. So that's going to be mostly apartment buildings and self-storage.
Interesting. That's awesome.
But we're kind of dipping our toes in, so we bought a tract of land where we can put up 10 twin homes, actually is what it is. So we'll dip our toes in with that, just kind of get our processes, our systems down. So we'll build those out, and then once those are done, we have 2 other projects where we've already acquired the land, and we'll start building those out too. And those will be complexes, apartments.
That's great.
So yeah.
I like that we talked a little bit about what you were doing first, which was, acquiring small properties. You didn't dive in to the big stuff right away, and people don't have to. They can, but they don't have to. It's all about finding the right opportunities and aligning yourself with the right people, learning it as you go, developing a thirst for knowledge, an obsession for knowledge on the topics, studying all the books, and then keep growing it and keep building it. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
tell me maybe a few of your most important books that have meant the most
Books,
to you.
yeah. So I'll keep it general. I won't make them real estate specific ones because not everyone listening is in real estate. But obviously the most cliche, Rich Dad Poor Dad, right?
Of course.
Rich Dad Poor Dad, it's not a real estate book. A lot of people think it's a real estate book. It's not. It's a mindset book about money.
Right.
And really what it does is it teaches you how quote-unquote rich people think about money and how poor people think about money. And when I say poor people, I don't mean disadvantaged people. I mean people who have 9-to-5 jobs, make great money, but just always seem to have an empty bank account.
Right.
Right? And it teaches you the ways that these people handle money, the mindsets behind the money, and what they do with the money. And I think that really connects the dots for me, at least it did, and for a lot of people, obviously it did. So I would recommend that. The other one is The Millionaire Next Door. Have you read that one?
I have not.
That's a really good one too. So that book, it was written in the 90s, and really what that book is it's a study. This guy studied, I want to say like 200 millionaires in America.
Okay.
And he studied how they made their money, where they got their money, how they managed their money, and their mindset and their habits with their money. And what was really fascinating about that book is, when you think of a millionaire, quote unquote, right, you think of someone who's living like this high life,
right,
who has this big flashy car, big house, etc., etc. But really, what that book teaches you is that your average millionaire doesn't necessarily live like that, and there's a reason why he is a millionaire,
right,
because he doesn't live like that. And so it's really fascinating. He goes into several different case studies of real people and how they were able to accumulate their wealth, what they do with their wealth. There was this segment there where they interviewed 10 decamillionaires, right? So someone who has a net worth of more than $10 million. And they interviewed 10 of them. They brought them all together, all self-made. And they brought them up to like this nice, fancy, like suite penthouse somewhere. I think it was in New York. And they had like a huge, spread out for everyone. And they had caviar there, and a bunch of like fancy foods, right?
Right.
And all these millionaires got there, and like he noticed they all like went up to the spread. They looked at it, and like no one actually like touched anything, and they went back down. And so when they started the interview, they asked these guys like, "Hey, why didn't any of you go? It's caviar. You guys love caviar, right? You're millionaires." And they all said like, "We don't know what this. We don't eat this stuff.
Right.
We don't know what this is." And that was really interesting. And obviously, not every decamillionaire is like that, but it was interesting that mindset was interesting. It's like that's how you accumulate wealth. Is that what we were talking about earlier, the delayed gratification, that living like no one else now, so you can live like no one else later. So that's a really good one. And then the third one is The Magic of Thinking Big, and that's another mindset book. And it talks about the law of attraction. Talks about thinking big in the future. So I'd recommend that too.
Absolutely love that. I think that people think that you always have to live like no one else, and there is a point where it is money that you've worked really hard for, and you do need to enjoy it, but you don't need to be wasteful with it either.
Yeah.
So maybe not caviar, but you can have a nice restaurant, like a nice steak or whatever. So like people get fearful almost, like, well, if I want to keep my money, I have to be careful with it. Yes, you have to be careful. You have to make wise decisions.
Yep.
You have to invest well, but it doesn't have to be bad all the time either.
Yeah,
At some point you get to enjoy it.
You gotta live a little, and
Yes.
I think what it is it's finding that line, and it's figuring out like what makes you the happiest with your money, right? So for me, I realized like I don't really like a lot of material things necessarily. Like clothes, I'm not a big clothes guy. It's just like, whatever fits me. I just want something that fits me, right? And it's fine if it's from Target. I shop at Target. But I love watches, right? So I'm a big watch guy. I spend money on watches, and I like watches. And that's like the one material thing that I don't mind. If it's if it's something to like I can't even say that word.
Commercialize?
No, like something to kind of signify something important that
Oh,
happened.
commemorate.
Yep, commemorate. So if it's like a deal I did or something like that, then yeah, I'll go spend money on that. Or if it experiences,
Yes.
right? You know, if it's traveling, if it's going to a concert, going to a football game, taking my family somewhere or something like that. That stuff is justified because it's something you're gonna remember. So it's whatever it makes you happy, and if nice clothes make you happy, then yeah, go spend. You know, treat yourself, and if you did something well, go buy some nice clothes. But it's finding that line where you're still saving, investing, but also like keeping yourself happy too at the same time.
So maybe you go get the nice clothes, but you skip out on eating out or whatever. You find balance in your life, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so you have talked a lot about being open to opportunities. You really jumped quickly with the Brandenburg crew and in real estate. You networked a lot and had all these opportunities, and it came a lot back down to mindset for you. Assurance, self-assurance, confidence, and with what you were wearing, overcoming the 22 years old, living like nobody else. You've talked a lot about mindset. You talked about the books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Think Big. How do you put yourself in that mindset on a consistent basis, or how do you reevaluate? Like, let's say you've hit a bump in the road, you're feeling kind of icky, or you're getting into that negative mindset. How do you reevaluate, and how do you get into that positive and big thinking mindset?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you're gonna have, like everyone, you're gonna have your ups and downs. Like there's days where I go out there and I'm just like, yeah, I'm just not feeling it today. Or things maybe aren't going right in your business and you feel a little down. Those things are going to happen. One thing that I've found that works for me is having a set of things I can do that kind of establish a little bit of a routine, and that keeps me kind of clear-headed a little bit, and it keeps me in a better mood. And I think if you're in a better mood, you're clear-headed, then you can think and you can kind of be in a better space in general. So like, one of those is eating healthy, eating at the time I'm supposed to eat and not eating something that's going to make me feel like crap afterwards. Exercise, that's another one. Reading, that's another one. Meditating, I used to do a little bit of that. I'm trying to get back on track again.
Sure.
But I think if whether it's in the morning or at night, if there's a series of things you can do that you can control, it's like that one piece of your day that you have total control over and that you can do no matter what happens. I think that really helps you kind of clear your mind, and it allows you to think, and it allows you to maybe think of those big ideas and stuff like that. But yeah, I find that if I start slacking on those things, then I start slacking in other areas like my mindset and health and that kind of stuff.
That's really important. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So I like asking this, but do you have any tools that you use in real estate entrepreneurship that somebody who's getting into that realm should be looking into or utilizing?
Some tools.
Yep.
What do you mean by
websites, apps, programs, anything that
Sure.
or Audible, anything that you use or have used in the past that you think are kind of important for people to at least be aware of?
I think it's important if you want to get into investment real estate. It's important to have some kind of good analysis spreadsheet that you're using, right, to run your numbers. When I was starting out, one thing I used to do is just find like a whole list of properties and just run numbers on them, just for fun. And really what that allowed me to do is really get comfortable with what different metrics mean, get comfortable with understanding what kind of returns are in my market, stuff like that. So I think that's an important tool, is finding, whether you make it yourself, you can go buy them online these days, you can do whatever.
Right.
But finding some kind of good analysis spreadsheet is important. And then besides that, is a good tool is, I think developing yourself, so networking is a great tool. Go out to those real estate events, go out, reach out to, I used to just reach out to people on Facebook.
Right.
And say, hey, you want to meet up? Or just like cold calling people. Someone that works for me right now, the way he got his job was he just cold called me one day.
Yeah.
And he just cold called me and he's like, hey, I like what you're doing. Here's what I can offer you. Can I have a job? And I was like, sure.
I love that.
I think that's what I did actually when I joined the Brandenburg crew. Is I met with one of your agents.
Yeah.
And then I interviewed with you guys, and then when I interviewed with you guys told me that you guys were like 6 months out or something.
Right.
And then but I just emailed you a resume anyway, and I said, here it is. And then a couple days later, I think Joel called me and he said, hey, come on in. So yeah, that's an important tool, is learning how to put yourself out there and meet new people, because that's where opportunities come from.
That's so great. And like, people use the excuse that, oh, well, I live in a smaller town or a smaller city, so they probably don't have anything. But Fargo is not that big. It's a pretty small city, and some people might even call it a large town. But we even have those kind of opportunities. There's after hours meetups, there's investment meetups. There's all kinds of things. You just have to be open to looking in the right places, or open to finding it too, right?
Yeah, and one thing I always tell myself is there's always someone doing something you want to do.
Yes.
So go find that person and learn from them. Or if you're already doing that, there's someone doing it better than you.
Yes.
And go find out how they're doing it better than you.
Love it.
So.
Okay. What's one tip that you can give us, whether it's looking into real estate or entrepreneurship in general, or we're growing and developing, we're leaders? Mm-hmm. What's one tip that you can leave us with?
One tip. I think kind of what I touched on earlier is get obsessed with something. Really become a student of whatever it is that you want to do. I think that's the greatest thing that you can do for yourself, because once you get obsessed with something, once you become a student of that, you're reading, you're learning, you're talking to other people that are doing it, and that's really how you're going to go the furthest. So whatever that is, if that's becoming a leader, then do that. If that's starting your own business, then do that. And those things might change. They might change every year, or they might change every couple of months. But whatever that is, really understand what it is and go for it.
Absolutely love that. I remember Tony Robbins talks about that too. When he finds something that he wants to do, he becomes obsessed with it, and he finds the best person he can find at that, like the top of the class, and he goes and learns from that person. And maybe we don't have the opportunity, but find someone better, find someone good at it, and just become obsessed with them.
Yeah, exactly. My current business partner that I run Greenwater with, that's how I met him. When I started in real estate, he was already kind of doing what I wanted to do, and I just cold called him one day, and I just said, hey, this is what I want to do, and he's like, sure. And so I met up with him, and then I harassed him for like 4 years until he finally wanted to get in business. But yeah, that's what I would encourage, and a lot of people actually will they'll be flattered by that. They like when people reach out to them and ask them for advice, or want to take them to a coffee or something. And then try to add value. One thing I did with this individual is I would always try to add value to him somehow. So whether that was bringing him a deal or telling him some kind of market insight about some property that might be coming up for sale, something like that was going to add value. And that's how you kind of build that connection with that person.
Right.
Versus just hitting them up all the time, be like, hey, you want to go to coffee, you want to go to lunch? And these people are busy.
Right.
So you need to add some kind of value.
I love that. And you've done that, and you've partnered with your partner now, but at the same time, like, you've maintained the relationships with our team, and for a little bit we were almost in the same world of real estate, but we had the opportunity to support each other instead of feeling like the fishbowl or the pot is too small.
Yeah.
There's just so much opportunity out there. Why not help each other out and lift each other up and offer opportunities to each other, because that just builds a better world for all of us.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys have been great. I've learned a lot from working here, and I really appreciate everything you guys have done for me. And Derek, I feel like I still have a good relationship with him. I think
Absolutely.
We're still actually doing one flip in Solution that hasn't sold yet, so hopefully it's closing next month. So I'm still tied to you guys a little bit. But yeah, it's been a good ride, and I think that's another big thing is, we were talking about finding someone who's doing something you already done. That's what I saw when I came in and interviewed with you guys the first time, is you guys were kind of building this business, and that's what I wanted to be part of. I wanted to be part of that growth, and I learned a lot from that. So.
Well, yeah, it's awesome, and it's been so cool to watch how much you've developed, and like, I admire your hard work ethic and the dedication.
I appreciate it. It's cool to see how much you guys are growing too. Like, I come here, I don't recognize anyone here anymore. You know, like I don't know any of these agents. There's so many of them. There's, you know, like this whole conference room out here was as big as our office when I used to work here. So
Yes.
it's cool to see. It's cool to see it on that front too. 100%.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions for you or wants to reach out to you, cold call you, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Facebook, LinkedIn, I'm on all those. Just shoot me a message, and yeah, always happy to talk real estate and give advice and yeah, or do deals. So.
Awesome. Well, I'll link all of Darsh's information in the description. And thanks again, Darsh, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Flourish Mindset. Don't forget to subscribe and follow so you don't miss a single episode.